Don't evict my mom. Take my Barbie as payment. The 6-year-old girl's voice echoed through the empty hallway, her tiny hands trembling as she held up her mermaid Barbie like it was the most valuable treasure in the world. Marcus Falcone, the billionaire CEO known for his ruthless coldness, froze in the doorway of apartment 3B. He had come to this modest building in Portland with one purpose: to evict the tenant who hadn't paid rent in 3 months. But nothing prepared him for those pleading blue eyes. "Please, mister," Lindsay begged, tears streaming down her pale face. "My grandma gave me this doll before she went to heaven. She's the most valuable thing I have. Take her and let us stay. Please." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Those eyes. They were exactly like Alex's, his 4-year-old son who had died in a plane crash 2 years earlier. Since that fateful day, he had transformed into a cold man, using work as a shield against the unbearable pain of loss. But now, kneeling before this desperate child, offering her most precious possession to save her mother, Marcus felt the walls around his heart beginning to crumble. He didn't know in that moment that this little girl and her single mother, Catherine, were about to change his life forever. That this desperate plea would be the beginning of a journey of redemption, love, and second chances. That sometimes salvation comes from where we least expect it. And that a simple Barbie could be worth far more than all the millions in the world. This is the story of how a broken heart learned to love again. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from and how old you are. I hope you enjoy the story. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 40th floor office. Each drop a tiny percussion against the glass that Marcus Falcone barely noticed anymore. He stood with his back to the magnificent view of Portland's skyline, his tailored navy suit perfectly pressed, his Rolex catching the cold fluorescent light as he flipped through financial reports with mechanical precision. His jaw was set in a hard line, his steel gray eyes scanning numbers that would make most men euphoric. Another quarter of record profits, another dozen properties acquired, another step further away from feeling anything at all. "Mr. Falcone?" David, his assistant, knocked tentatively on the open door, his voice carrying that apologetic tone Marcus had grown accustomed to hearing. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation at the Riverside Gardens property." Marcus didn't look up from his reports. "Handle it." "Sir, I've tried. It's been 3 months of non-payment. Apartment 3B. The tenant isn't responding to any of our notices. Legal says we need to move forward with the eviction, but I thought you should know before we—" "3 months?" Marcus's voice was ice. He finally looked up, and David took an involuntary step back. "Why am I only hearing about this now?" "Well, sir, we usually handle these matters at the management level, but this one has been complicated. The tenant had a perfect payment history for 2 years before this. No complaints, no issues. Then suddenly nothing. We've tried calling, sent certified letters, everything." Marcus set down his reports with a sharp snap. The sound echoed in the vast office like a judge's gavel. "People who don't honor their commitments don't deserve second chances, David. How many times do I have to say this? We're running a business, not a charity." The words came out with practiced coldness, the same coldness he'd wrapped around himself like armor for the past 2 years. "I'll handle it myself." David blinked in surprise. "Sir, you don't need to personally—" "I said I'll handle it." Marcus was already reaching for his coat, an expensive cashmere overcoat that probably cost more than 3 months' rent at Riverside Gardens. "Get me the file and the keys. If someone needs to understand that actions have consequences, I'm more than happy to deliver that message personally." As David scurried away, Marcus caught his reflection in the window. At 32, he looked older than his years. The lines around his eyes had deepened, not from laughter but from countless sleepless nights. His brown hair was perfectly styled, his beard trimmed with geometric precision, everything about him screaming control. He'd learned that control was all that stood between him and the abyss of grief that threatened to swallow him whole. 20 minutes later, Marcus pulled his black Mercedes into the parking lot of Riverside Gardens in St. John's. The building was one of his older properties, a modest 3-story brick structure that had seen better days. It was a far cry from the luxury high-rises downtown, that bore the Falcone name in gleaming letters. He looked at it with distaste, clutching the manila folder with the eviction notices in one hand and the keys in the other. The rain had slowed to a drizzle as he walked up the concrete path, stepping over a child's forgotten bicycle and a deflated soccer ball. The hallway inside smelled of old carpet and someone's cooking, something with garlic and tomato that reminded him painfully of Sunday dinners that would never happen again. He pushed the memory away violently and climbed the stairs to the third floor, his Italian leather shoes clicking with authority on each step. Apartment 3B. The number was slightly crooked, hanging by one screw. Marcus knocked sharply, 3 precise raps that echoed down the empty hallway. He waited, his impatience growing with each second. He raised his hand to knock again when he heard small footsteps approaching from inside. The door opened slowly, revealing not the deadbeat tenant he'd expected, but a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with blonde hair pulled back in pigtails tied with pink ribbons, and the most striking blue eyes Marcus had ever seen. She was wearing a faded pink dress that had clearly been washed too many times, and she was looking up at him with an expression that was far too serious for such a young face. Marcus felt his prepared speech die in his throat. Those eyes. They were the exact shade of no. He wouldn't think about it. He couldn't. "Are you the man who's going to make us leave?" the little girl asked, her voice small but steady. There was no fear in it, only a sort of resigned sadness that no child should possess. Marcus struggled to find his voice. I need to speak with your mother. Is she home?" The little girl's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She was holding herself together with a strength that made Marcus's chest tighten painfully. "Mommy's in her bedroom, she's crying. She thinks I don't know, but I can hear her. She cries a lot now, ever since she lost her job." The professional distance Marcus had maintained for 2 years began to crack. This wasn't some irresponsible tenant trying to game the system. This was a child who reminded him so much of Alex that it physically hurt to look at her. His son would have been 7 now if the plane hadn't. "Please, mister," the little girl continued, her voice breaking slightly. "Please don't make us leave. This is our home. I promise I'll be really, really good. I'll keep my toys picked up. I won't make any noise. I'll help Mommy more. Just please let us stay." Marcus felt something inside him beginning to crumble, that carefully constructed wall he'd built around his heart developing its first crack. "What's your name?" he heard himself ask, his voice gentler than it had been in years. "Lindsay," she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Lindsay Reynolds." Lindsay. The name felt strange on his tongue, too human, too real. This was supposed to be a simple eviction, a business transaction, a lesson in responsibility. "I really need to talk to your mother about the rent situation." Lindsay's face crumpled and Marcus saw her making a decision. She turned and ran into the apartment, her small feet padding on the worn carpet. Marcus stood in the doorway, uncertain, his hand still gripping the eviction papers that suddenly felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. When Lindsay returned, she was clutching something to her chest with both hands, holding it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. As she got closer, Marcus saw it was a Barbie doll, not one of the new ones with elaborate outfits and accessories, but an older model, well-loved and carefully maintained. The doll was dressed as a mermaid, with a shimmering tail and long blonde hair that someone had obviously brushed countless times. Lindsay held out the doll to Marcus with trembling hands, her blue eyes swimming with tears that now overflowed and ran down her cheeks. "Take my Barbie as payment," she cried out, her voice breaking with desperation. "She's really special. My grandma gave her to me before she went to heaven. She's the most valuable thing I have. Please, mister, please, take her and let us stay." Marcus felt as if someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart with an iron fist. This little girl was offering her most precious possession, a gift from her deceased grandmother, to save her home. He knelt down slowly, his expensive suit trousers touching the worn carpet, bringing himself to Lindsay's eye level. His hands were shaking, something that never happened during business negotiations, during board meetings, during the countless hours he spent building his empire. "Lindsay," he managed to say, his voice rough with emotion he'd kept buried for so long. "You don't have to give me your Barbie." "But we don't have money," Lindsay sobbed, still holding out the doll. "And you're going to make us leave. Mommy said we might have to sleep in our car, and I'm scared, mister. I'm really scared. But if you take my Barbie, maybe it will be enough. Grandma said she was valuable because she's from a long time ago and—" "Lindsay Marie Reynolds, what are you doing?" Marcus looked up to see a young woman rushing toward them from one of the bedrooms. She couldn't have been more than 26, with blonde hair that fell past her shoulders and green eyes that were red and swollen from crying. She was wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, and despite the obvious signs of stress and worry etched on her face, there was something striking about her, a dignity, a strength that even desperation couldn't fully diminish. She pulled Lindsay behind her protectively, facing Marcus with a mixture of shame and defiant courage. "Mr. Falcone, I presume." Her voice was steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "I'm Catherine Reynolds. I'm so sorry about Lindsay. She shouldn't have—" Her voice broke as she looked down at her daughter still clutching the Barbie. "Baby, go to your room, please." "But Mommy—" "Now, Lindsay." The little girl's face crumpled, but she obeyed, running to her room with the Barbie still clutched to her chest. Marcus could hear muffled sobs from behind the closed door, and each one felt like a knife to his heart. Marcus slowly stood up, and for the first time since entering the building, he really looked at the apartment. It was small, barely 800 square feet if he had to guess, but it was spotlessly clean. The furniture was old but well-maintained. There were no signs of neglect or carelessness. On the refrigerator were Lindsay's drawings, held up with alphabet magnets. On a small bookshelf were children's books organized by size. On the worn couch were blankets folded with military precision. These weren't people taking advantage of the system. These were people trying their absolute best and failing anyway. Catherine followed his gaze and squared her shoulders. "I know what you're thinking, that I'm just another deadbeat tenant making excuses. But Mr. Falcone, I swear to you I'm not that person." Her voice was passionate now, desperate but dignified. "I've paid my rent on time for 2 years. 2 years. I've never been late, not once. I worked as a custodian at Williams & Sons office complex. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and I was good at it. I could take care of my daughter. We weren't rich, but we were okay. We were managing." She took a shaky breath, wrapping her arms around herself as if she were cold. 3 days ago, they called me into the manager's office. They said they were restructuring, that they'd found a company that could do the work for less. They gave me 2 weeks severance and a box for my things. Just like that. 5 years of perfect attendance. 5 years of working double shifts when they needed me. 5 years of loyalty. And it meant nothing. Marcus found himself unable to look away from her. There was something about the way she held herself, the way she refused to completely break down even in the face of losing everything, that demanded respect. "I've been looking for work," Catherine continued, her voice cracking. "God, I've been trying so hard. I've filled out 47 applications in 3 days. 47. But everyone wants references, and my old supervisor won't return my calls. I think he feels guilty. And with Lindsay to take care of, I can't take jobs with overnight shifts or weekends, which eliminates half the openings. I just need a little more time. Please, Mr. Falcone, I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a chance. 2 weeks. Give me 2 more weeks and I'll find something. I'll pay everything I owe, every penny, with interest if you want. Just please don't put us on the street." Marcus looked at the closed door where Lindsay had disappeared, then back at Catherine. He should say no. He should hand over the eviction papers, explain that business was business, and leave. That's what the old Marcus, the Marcus from before the accident, would have done. That's definitely what the new Marcus, the cold, efficient Marcus who'd built walls around his heart, should do. But those blue eyes, Lindsay's blue eyes, so much like Alex's, and Catherine's quiet strength, so much like Joanne's had been, and the way Lindsay had offered her most precious possession to save her mother, with the kind of selfless love that Marcus hadn't let himself think about in 2 years, because thinking about love meant thinking about loss. "How much time do you need?" The words came out of his mouth before he'd consciously decided to say them. Catherine's eyes widened. What? How much time do you need to find employment? Marcus heard himself saying, watched himself betraying every business principle he'd ever established. Realistically, 2 weeks, maybe 3. I have interviews scheduled. I just need someone to actually hire me and 1 month, Marcus said firmly. You have 1 month. No interest, no late fees. At the end of 30 days, we'll reassess the situation. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth and fresh tears, these ones of shock and relief, spilled down her cheeks. Mr. Falcone, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. I promise you won't regret this. I'll find work. I'll pay everything. She was interrupted by the sound of the bedroom door opening. Lindsay peeked out, her face streaked with tears, the Barbie still clutched in her arms. When she saw Marcus still there and her mother not crying anymore, she cautiously emerged. She walked slowly up to Marcus and, before he could react, wrapped her small arms around his leg in a tight hug. Thank you, mister, she whispered. Thank you for being nice. You're a good man, I can tell. Marcus stood frozen, feeling the small body pressed against him, and for one devastating moment it was Alex hugging him goodbye before that last trip, saying, "See you soon, Daddy," with absolute faith that soon would come. The memory crashed over him like a wave, threatening to drown him. His hands trembled as he gently, carefully placed one hand on Lindsay's head, letting himself feel the texture of her hair, the warmth of her small body, the reality of this living, breathing child who needed help. "You keep your Barbie, Lindsay," he managed to say, his voice thick. "That's too valuable to give away. Your grandmother gave it to you, which means it's priceless." Lindsay looked up at him with those devastating blue eyes and she smiled. A real smile, bright and hopeful and full of the kind of faith that Marcus had forgotten could exist. "Will you come visit us sometimes? I could show you my other Barbies. I have 4 more, but Mermaid Barbie is my favorite." "Lindsay, Mr. Falcone is a very busy man," Catherine said gently, placing her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "I'm sure he has many important things to do." Marcus looked at them both, the mother trying to hold her world together with sheer willpower, the daughter offering friendship with the easy openness of childhood, and felt something shift in his chest. It wasn't the sharp pain of grief he'd carried for 2 years. It was something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. "Maybe I will," he heard himself say. "Maybe I will visit sometime." As he walked back to his Mercedes, the rain had stopped completely, and thin rays of October sunlight were breaking through the clouds. Marcus sat in his car for a long time, his hands gripping the steering wheel, the eviction papers forgotten on the passenger seat. He'd just made a terrible business decision. He'd just shown weakness. He'd just let emotions cloud his judgment. And yet, for the first time in 2 years, he felt something other than the crushing weight of guilt and grief. He felt needed, useful, like maybe, just maybe, his life could mean something beyond accumulating wealth and punishing himself for surviving. He looked at the file on the passenger seat and made a decision. Pulling out his phone, he called David. "David, remove apartment 3B from the eviction proceedings. Mark the account with a note. Extenuating circumstances. Payment plan to be established. And David, if anyone questions this decision, they answer to me directly. Understood?" "Yes, sir. Of course, sir." Marcus ended the call and started the car. But before pulling away, he looked back at the building one more time. On the 3rd floor, he could see a small face pressed against the window. Lindsay, waving enthusiastically. Without thinking, Marcus lifted his hand and waved back. As he drove home to his mansion in the West Hills, the house that had felt like a mausoleum for 2 years, Marcus found himself thinking not about quarterly reports or acquisition targets or market analyses. He was thinking about a little girl with blue eyes and a Barbie, and a young mother fighting to keep her dignity in the face of crushing circumstances. He was thinking that maybe Alex and Joanne wouldn't want him to spend the rest of his life as a monument to grief. Maybe they'd want him to live, really live, and maybe, just maybe, he'd found a reason to start trying. That night, Marcus did something he hadn't done since the funeral. He opened a bottle of wine, a 1995 Chateau Margaux that Joanne had been saving for a special occasion, and he sat in his vast living room with its vaulted ceilings and original artwork, and he made a decision. He pulled out his laptop and sent an email to his HR director. I need you to create a position. Custodial services, Falcone Tower, night shift. Pay rate $22 per hour, full benefits, paid time off. Posted internally first, then if no qualified candidates, post externally. I want this done by tomorrow morning. Then he went upstairs to the bedroom wing, walked past the master bedroom where he'd barely slept since Joanne's death, and stopped in front of a closed door at the end of the hall. Alex's room. He'd kept it locked for 2 years, unable to bear seeing the toys waiting for a child who would never play with them again, the clothes hanging in the closet that would never be outgrown. His hand shook as he reached for the doorknob. He didn't turn it, not tonight, but he touched it, and that was something. That was progress. I met a little girl today, he whispered to the closed door, to his son's memory, to whatever part of Alex might still somehow be listening. She has your eyes, buddy, and she's in trouble, and I think I might be able to help. Is that okay? Is it okay for me to care about someone else? The house was silent, but in that silence, Marcus felt something like peace, like permission, like maybe it was finally time to let some light back into the darkness. 4 days later, Marcus's phone rang while he was in a meeting with his acquisition team. He normally never answered during meetings, but when he saw it was David calling, he felt his heart rate spike. Excuse me, he told the surprised executives and stepped out into the hallway. Sir, Catherine Reynolds just came by the main office, David said. She wanted to apply for the custodial position we posted. I have her application here and, well, she's more than qualified. 5 years of experience, references finally came through, everything checks out. Should I move forward with the interview process? Marcus felt an unexpected surge of, what? Relief? Happiness? Something he didn't want to examine too closely. Skip the interview. Offer her the position. Start date as soon as possible. And David? Make sure she knows about the child care subsidy and our benefits package. We do have one, don't we? There was a pause. No, sir, we don't. Then create one. Effective immediately. All employees with dependent children receive a stipend for childcare expenses. Work out the details with HR. Sir, that's going to cost the company. I don't care what it costs. Make it happen. Marcus ended the call and stood in the hallway, a smile tugging at his lips for the first time in what felt like forever. When he returned to the meeting, the executives were stunned to see their normally stone-faced CEO looking almost happy. That Monday evening, as the sun set over Portland and the Falcone Tower began to empty of day staff, Marcus found himself working late, or rather pretending to work late. He'd been staring at the same contract for 20 minutes when he heard the sound of someone humming in the hallway. He got up and walked to his office door, opening it quietly. Down the corridor, he could see Catherine pushing a cleaning cart, humming softly to herself as she worked. She was wearing the company-issued uniform, simple navy blue scrubs, and her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She was cleaning the windows of one of the conference rooms with focused attention, making sure to get every streak, every smudge. Marcus watched her work for a moment, noticing how she smiled even while doing menial labor, how she took pride in doing the job well. There was something beautiful about it, about her refusal to let circumstances diminish her spirit. Ms. Reynolds, he called out. Catherine jumped slightly, then turned, her eyes widening when she saw him. Mr. Falcone, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you, I can come back later. No, please continue. I just wanted to see how your first day was going. Catherine's face broke into a radiant smile that lit up the entire hallway. Mr. Falcone, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. This job, it's an answer to prayer. The salary is more than I was making before, and the benefits package, and that child care subsidy. Her eyes got misty. You created that for me, didn't you? David tried to play it off as existing policy, but I'm not stupid, that's new. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. We should have had it already. It's only logical. Good employees are hard to find. Well, I promise you won't regret hiring me. I might just be cleaning offices, but I'm going to be the best cleaner this tower has ever seen. Every surface is going to sparkle. Every corner is going to be spotless. I'm going to work so hard. I know you will. Marcus interrupted gently. That's why I hired you. And Ms. Reynolds, it's not just cleaning. Every job has dignity. The people who keep this building running are just as important as the executives who work here. Don't ever diminish your own worth. Catherine looked at him with something like wonder. You're not like I expected. When I first saw you at my apartment in your expensive suit and your watch that probably cost more than my car, I thought you were just another rich man who couldn't see people like me. But you're different, aren't you? Marcus didn't know how to answer that. Was he different? Or had he just been reminded by a little girl with blue eyes and a Barbie of who he used to be before grief made him hard? How's Lindsay? He asked, changing the subject. Catherine's face softened even more. She talks about you constantly. The nice man who saved us, she calls you. She drew you a picture. It's on our refrigerator. You're wearing a cape, like a superhero. She laughed, and the sound was like music. I hope you don't mind that my daughter thinks you're a hero. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I'm not a hero, Ms. Reynolds. I'm just trying to be a better person than I've been for the last couple of years. There was something in his voice, some hint of pain, that made Catherine look at him more closely. Are you okay, Mr. Falcone? I don't mean to pry, but you seem sad. Even when you're being kind, there's sadness in your eyes. No one had asked him that in 2 years. No one had dared to look past the CEO exterior to see the broken man underneath. Marcus found himself wanting to tell her everything, about Alex and Joanne, about the plane crash, about the guilt that ate at him every single day. But he couldn't. Not yet. Not here in this hallway with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I should let you get back to work, he said instead. And I should go home. Mr. Falcone? Catherine called, as he turned to leave. Thank you, for everything. You gave me more than a job, you gave me hope. I'll never forget that. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice, and walked back to his office. He gathered his things mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere. As he rode the elevator down to the parking garage, he realized something startling. He was looking forward to tomorrow, looking forward to coming to work, to maybe seeing Catherine in the hallways, to hearing about Lindsay, to being part of their lives in some small way. It wasn't much, but it was something, and something was infinitely better than the nothing he'd been feeling for so long. The weeks that followed established a pattern. Marcus found himself working late more and more often, late enough that Catherine would be there, cleaning the executive floor. They started talking, small conversations at first, about weather and work and the Portland Trail Blazers season. But gradually, the conversations deepened. One evening, Marcus found Catherine in the break room, sitting at one of the tables during her break, looking at something on her phone with a worried expression. Everything all right? He asked. She looked up, startled, then smiled tiredly. Oh yes, sorry. Just looking at Lindsay's school calendar. They have a Father's Day event coming up, and she's been asking questions about her dad. I don't know what to tell her. The truth, that he walked out when I was 6 months pregnant, seems too harsh, but I don't want to lie to her either. Marcus poured himself a coffee and, after a moment's hesitation, sat down across from her. You've never heard from him? Lindsay's father? Catherine shook her head bitterly. Carlton Hayes. We met when I was 20. He was charming, said all the right things, promised me the world. When I got pregnant, he changed overnight. Suddenly I was trapping him, ruining his life, taking away his freedom. He left before Lindsay was even born. No child support, no birthday cards, nothing. It's like we don't exist to him. His loss, Marcus said firmly. Lindsay is an incredible little girl. Any man would be lucky to be her father. Catherine looked at him with those penetrating green eyes. You really mean that, don't you? It's not just something you're saying to be polite. You actually care about my daughter. Marcus thought about how to answer. When I met Lindsay, he began slowly. When she offered me her Barbie, something in me broke, or maybe fixed. I don't know which. He took a deep breath. I had a son, Alex. He died 2 years ago in a plane crash. He was 4 years old. My wife Joanne died with him. They were going to Disneyland while I stayed behind for a business meeting. I've spent every day since wondering why I wasn't on that plane with them. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. Oh my God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It was the first time she'd called him by his first name, and something about it felt right. Natural. No one knows? Marcus continued. I mean, people know I'm a widower, but they don't know. They don't know that I've been dead inside ever since. That I turned myself into a machine because feeling anything was too painful. And then I met your daughter, and she looked at me with eyes exactly like Alex's, and she was brave and selfless and perfect, and I couldn't. His voice broke. I couldn't just kick her out. I couldn't be that person. Not to her. Catherine reached across the table and took his hand. The gesture was simple, but it was the first real human contact Marcus had allowed since the funeral. Her hand was warm, her grip gentle but firm. You're not dead inside, she said softly. You're wounded. There's a difference. Dead things don't feel pain. You feel pain, which means you're still alive, still capable of healing, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped across the break room table, two broken people finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. When Catherine finally had to return to work, Marcus felt the loss of her hand in his like a physical ache. Catherine, he called as she picked up her cleaning supplies. Would it be all right if I visited sometime? To see Lindsay? I'd like to check on how you both are doing, if that's not inappropriate. Catherine's smile was radiant. Inappropriate? Marcus, Lindsay asks about you every single day. She would be thrilled. We both would. 2 days later, Marcus found himself standing outside apartment 3B on a Saturday afternoon, feeling more nervous than he had before any board meeting or investor presentation. He was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, and he was carrying several shopping bags from the FAO Schwartz toy store downtown. He'd told himself he was just being nice, just checking on a tenant, just making sure his investment in Catherine was paying off. But as he raised his hand to knock, he knew he was lying to himself. He wanted to see Lindsay. He needed to see her. Some part of him that had been frozen since Alex's death was beginning to thaw, and Lindsay was the catalyst. The door flew open before he could knock, and Lindsay stood there in leggings and a t-shirt with a cartoon unicorn on it, her eyes going wide with delight. Mom, it's Mr. Marcus. He came. He really came. She launched herself at him with the fearless affection of childhood, wrapping her arms around his waist in an enthusiastic hug. Marcus's breath caught, but this time the pain was mixed with something warmer. He carefully set down the shopping bags and returned the hug, letting himself feel the weight of the small body, the warmth of the embrace. Hi, Lindsay. I hope it's okay that I stopped by. Okay? It's the best. Lindsay grabbed his hand and pulled him into the apartment. Come on, you have to see my room. I reorganized my Barbies, and I made a school for them, and... Lindsay, give Mr. Falcone a chance to breathe, Catherine said, emerging from the kitchen with a dish towel in her hands. She was wearing jeans and a simple green blouse that matched her eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders, and Marcus thought she looked beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with fashion or money, and everything to do with authenticity. It's all right, Marcus said. I brought some things. I hope that's okay. I wasn't sure what to bring, and the store had so much, and He stopped talking, realizing he was babbling like a nervous teenager. But Catherine was smiling at him with such warmth that he didn't feel embarrassed. You didn't have to bring anything, she said. Your company is gift enough. Lindsay was already diving into the shopping bags, pulling out a complete Barbie dream house, accessories, new dolls, coloring books, and art supplies. "Mom, look, it's the dream house, the one I saw on TV. And there's clothes and a car and—" She stopped suddenly, looking up at Marcus with tears in her eyes. "This is too much. This must have cost so much money, we can't accept—" "Yes, you can," Marcus said firmly, kneeling down to her level. "Your mermaid Barbie deserves a proper house, don't you think? And these are gifts, Lindsay. When someone gives you a gift, you accept it graciously and say thank you. Your grandmother would want you to have nice things." Lindsay looked at her mother, who nodded with tears in her own eyes. Then she threw her arms around Marcus's neck and whispered in his ear, "Thank you, Mr. Marcus, you're the best almost dad ever." Almost dad. The words hit Marcus like a freight train. He closed his eyes and held the little girl, feeling something crack open in his chest. Something that had been locked away for 2 years. Something that hurt, but also felt like coming back to life. They spent the afternoon setting up the dream house, creating elaborate scenarios for the Barbies, and laughing in a way Marcus had forgotten he could. Catherine made them lunch, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, simple but made with care, and they ate together at the small kitchen table like a family. It was so different from the formal dinners Marcus had gotten used to, eating alone at his massive dining table with catered meals that tasted like cardboard. As the afternoon wore on and Lindsay played contentedly with her new toys, Marcus and Catherine sat on the couch, talking quietly. "She really loves you, you know," Catherine said. "I haven't seen her this happy since before I lost my job. Actually, I don't know if I've ever seen her this happy. Carlton left before she was born, so she's never had a father figure. You're filling a space in her life she didn't even know was empty." Marcus watched Lindsay arranging furniture in the dream house with intense concentration. "She's filling a space in my life too. I didn't think I could feel this way again, protective, needed, like I have a purpose beyond making money." Alex used to play with action figures the way Lindsay plays with Barbies. He'd create these elaborate stories with heroes and villains and dramatic rescues. I used to watch him for hours. "What was he like?" Catherine asked softly, if it's okay to ask. Marcus found himself wanting to talk about Alex, something he'd been unable to do with anyone else. He was fearless, curious about everything. He wanted to be a pilot because my father, his grandfather, flew planes in the Air Force. Joanne and I were taking him to Disneyland as a surprise. He'd been begging to go for months. His voice roughened. The plane went down in bad weather, engine failure. They said it was quick, that they probably didn't suffer. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Catherine's hand found his again, and this time Marcus held on tight. "I was in a meeting about acquiring a shopping center in Seattle," he continued. "A shopping center. I chose a shopping center over my family, and now they're gone. And I have the shopping center, and it means nothing. Absolutely nothing." "You couldn't have known," Catherine said. "Marcus, you couldn't have known. You were providing for your family. That's what parents do. You were being a good father, a good husband. The accident wasn't your fault." "Then why does it feel like it was?" Marcus's voice broke. "Why does every success feel like a betrayal? Why do I hate myself for still being here when they're not?" Catherine shifted closer and, in a gesture that was both maternal and intimate, pulled his head onto her shoulder. "Because you loved them. Because grief is the price we pay for love. But Marcus, listen to me. Surviving isn't betraying them. Living isn't dishonoring their memory. If they loved you, and I'm sure they did, they would want you to be happy. They would want you to live." Marcus let himself lean into her comfort, let himself be vulnerable in a way he hadn't allowed since the funeral. They sat like that for a long time, until Lindsay noticed and came over, climbing onto Marcus's lap and snuggling against his chest. "Are you sad, Mr. Marcus?" she asked, looking up at him with those impossibly blue eyes. "A little bit," he admitted. "But being here with you and your mom makes me feel better." Lindsay patted his cheek with her small hand. "My grandma told me something before she went to heaven. She said that people we love never really leave us. They stay right here. She pressed her hand over Marcus's heart. So your little boy and your wife are still with you, Mr. Marcus? Always. And maybe they sent you to us because they knew we needed you and you needed us too. Out of the mouths of babes. Marcus felt tears running down his face, but for the first time, they weren't just tears of grief. They were tears of gratitude, of hope, of beginning to heal. I think you're right, sweetheart, he whispered. I think you're absolutely right. As weeks turned into months, Marcus became a regular fixture in Lindsay and Catherine's lives. He showed up every Saturday afternoon, sometimes with gifts, sometimes just with himself. He took Lindsay to the Oregon Zoo, where they spent hours watching the elephants. He took her to the Portland Children's Museum, where she played in the water feature until she was soaked and giggling. He took both Catherine and Lindsay to the Portland Saturday Market, where they browsed handmade crafts and ate food truck delicacies. With each visit, Marcus felt more of himself coming back. The ice around his heart was melting, and while the process was often painful, every milestone reminded him of ones Alex would never reach. It was also beautiful. He was learning to hold both grief and joy simultaneously, to honor his lost family while opening himself to new connections. Catherine and Marcus's friendship deepened during her late-night shifts. Marcus found more and more reasons to work late, and they would spend Catherine's breaks talking about everything and nothing. He learned about her childhood in rural Oregon, about her dreams of going to college, about the poetry she wrote in secret. She learned about his struggles with his father's expectations, about how he'd built his company through sheer determination, about the loneliness that had plagued him even before Joanne's death. One night in early January, Marcus found Catherine in tears in the break room. She was staring at her phone, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Catherine, what's wrong? Is Lindsay okay? She's fine, Catherine managed. She's with my neighbor. It's just... She held up her phone. Carlton, her father. He just texted me for the first time in 7 years. Do you know what he said? He wants back in her life. After 7 years of nothing, he suddenly decides he wants to be a dad. Her voice was thick with anger and pain. I don't know what to do. He has legal rights even though he's never used them. What if he tries to take her? What if he breaks her heart? What if... Marcus sat down and took her hands. First, breathe. Second, we'll figure this out. Do you have a lawyer? A lawyer? Marcus, I can barely afford rent even with this job. I can't afford a lawyer. Then I'll get you one. The best family lawyer in Portland. We'll make sure Lindsay is protected. You can't keep solving all my problems, Catherine protested weakly. You've already done so much. I'm not solving your problems. I'm helping my friends. There's a difference. The word friends felt inadequate for what Catherine had become to him, but Marcus wasn't ready to examine that too closely. Catherine looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. Then she said something that changed everything. Why are you really doing all this, Marcus? Why do you care so much about us? And please don't say it's just because Lindsay reminds you of Alex. There's something more, isn't there? Marcus's heart pounded. This was the moment. The moment to be honest or to hide behind comfortable lies. He thought about what Joanne would want him to do. She'd always valued honesty above all else. You're right, he said slowly. It started with Lindsay reminding me of Alex. But it's not that anymore. Catherine, you've become... He struggled for words. When I'm with you and Lindsay, I feel like myself again. Not the grief-stricken widower, not the cold CEO, just Marcus. The man I used to be before I learned to protect myself by not feeling anything. You make me want to feel again even when it hurts. You make me want to be better, do better, live better. Catherine's eyes were wide, her breath catching. Marcus, I'm not asking for anything, he continued quickly. I know there's a power imbalance here. You're my employee. I'm your landlord. There are 1,000 reasons why this is inappropriate. But I needed you to know that you matter to me. You both matter to me. More than I probably should admit. The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Catherine did something Marcus didn't expect. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft, brief, but unmistakable. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. "I've been trying not to fall in love with you," she whispered. "I told myself it was impossible, that we were from different worlds, that you were just being kind. But Marcus, I failed. I'm in love with you, with your gentleness and your hidden pain and the way you play Barbies with my daughter like it's the most important thing in the world. I'm in love with who you are when you're not trying to be strong." Marcus felt his world shift on its axis. "You're in love with me?" Hopelessly. "Is that okay?" Instead of answering with words, Marcus kissed her again, properly this time, pouring 2 years of grief and loneliness and desperate need for connection into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, they were both crying and laughing. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," Marcus admitted. "I didn't think I could. I didn't think I deserved to. But I am." They sat in that break room, holding each other, understanding that they'd crossed a line they could never uncross. And neither of them wanted to go back. The next few months were complicated, but beautiful. Marcus and Catherine navigated their new relationship carefully, mindful of the ethics and optics. Marcus made sure Catherine's employment was secure regardless of their personal relationship, even putting it in writing and having it reviewed by the company's legal team. He didn't want there to be any question that she'd earned her position. Lindsay was ecstatic when they told her they were dating. "Does this mean Mr. Marcus is my boyfriend's dad now?" she asked with childhood logic that made them both laugh. "Not quite yet, sweetie," Catherine said. "But he is Mommy's boyfriend." "Good," Lindsay declared. "He's the best boyfriend ever. Way better than my friend Aisha's mom's boyfriend, who doesn't even know how to play Barbies." Marcus officially met Lindsay's needs head-on, attending parent-teacher conferences with Catherine, helping with homework, teaching Lindsay to ride a bike in the park. He was there for the small moments and the big ones, slowly stepping into a role he'd thought he'd lost forever. The transformation in Marcus was noticed by everyone. His employees whispered about how he smiled more, how he'd started a corporate charity program, how he'd implemented more generous benefits. David, his assistant, pulled him aside one day. "Sir, I don't know what's happened to you over the last few months, but whatever it is, it's good. You're different, better. The old Mr. Falcone, before the accident, he's coming back." Marcus thought about that. Was he coming back? Or was he becoming someone new? Someone who'd known loss but chose connection anyway? Someone who'd been broken but was learning how to heal? Then came a cold March evening that would change everything again. Catherine called Marcus in a panic, her voice high and terrified. "Marcus, something's wrong with Lindsay. She collapsed at school. They've taken her to Emmanuel Medical Center. I'm on my way there now, but I'm scared. I'm so scared." "I'm coming," Marcus said, already grabbing his keys. "Don't drive if you're upset. I'll pick you up. Where are you?" "Still at work. I was just starting my shift." "Stay there. I'm 5 minutes away." Marcus drove like a man possessed, his heart hammering against his ribs. Not again. Please, God, not again. He couldn't lose another child. He couldn't survive that twice. He picked up Catherine, who was shaking so badly she could barely walk. In the car, she clutched his hand with bruising force. "She was fine this morning," Catherine kept saying. She was fine. She ate her breakfast. She was laughing. She was excited about show and tell. What happened? What happened to my baby? Marcus drove with one hand, holding Catherine with the other, praying to a God he'd stopped believing in 2 years ago. Please, please. Not Lindsay. Not this bright, beautiful child who'd brought him back to life. Take me instead if someone has to go. Take me, but let her live. At the hospital, they were met by a young nurse who led them to a private consultation room. The wait was excruciating, 10 minutes that felt like 10 hours. Marcus held Catherine while she cried, while she prayed, while she bargained with the universe. Finally, a doctor in his 50s entered, his face serious. "Ms. Reynolds, I'm Dr. Patterson. I've been examining your daughter. Is she okay? Please tell me she's okay. Dr. Patterson sat down, and Marcus's heart sank. Doctors only sat down for bad news. He'd learned that 2 years ago. Lindsay is stable right now, but we've discovered a serious condition. She has a congenital heart defect, specifically a form of cardiomyopathy that's been developing undetected. The physical stress from her activities today caused her to faint. Ms. Reynolds, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Your daughter needs surgery. Soon. Catherine's face went white. Surgery? How soon? How serious? Will she be okay? The surgery is complex but has a high success rate when performed by the right team. We have an excellent pediatric cardiac surgeon here at Emmanuel. However, he paused. The procedure is expensive. We're looking at approximately $250,000, and that's not including the post-operative care and recovery period. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Catherine made a sound like she'd been punched. I have insurance from work, but that much? I don't have that kind of money. I don't have anything close to that. We can work out a payment plan, and there are charity programs. How long does she have? Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the chaos in his heart. If she doesn't get the surgery? Dr. Patterson's face was grave. Her condition will continue to deteriorate. Without surgical intervention, I'd estimate she has perhaps 6 months. Maybe less. Catherine let out a wail of pure anguish. Marcus held her, but his mind was already working, already planning. Schedule the surgery, he said to Dr. Patterson. Sir, Ms. Reynolds needs to make financial arrangements first. I said schedule the surgery. Marcus's voice had the command of someone used to being obeyed. I'll cover all costs. The surgery, the recovery, the follow-up care, all of it. Use the best surgeon you have, spare no expense, she gets whatever she needs. Dr. Patterson's eyebrows rose. Mr. Falcone, Marcus Falcone, here's my card. Have your billing department contact my office. Whatever needs to be paid, bill me directly. Marcus, no, Catherine said through her tears. That's too much. It's $250,000. I don't care if it's $1 million, Marcus said fiercely. I'm not losing her, Catherine. I'm not losing another child I love. I won't, I can't. The words hung there. Another child I love. Neither of them had said it explicitly before, but in that moment of crisis, the truth came out. Marcus loved Lindsay. Not just because she reminded him of Alex, but because she was herself. Brilliant, kind, brave Lindsay who'd offered her Barbie to save her mom. Who'd called him the nice man. Who'd given him a reason to live again. Catherine crumbled into his arms, sobbing with fear and relief and gratitude. Dr. Patterson quietly excused himself, saying he'd arranged the surgery for the following week. When he was gone, Catherine looked up at Marcus with swollen eyes. I can't let you do this. It's too much. How can I ever repay? You don't repay love, Marcus said simply. You don't repay family. And that's what you are to me, Catherine. You and Lindsay. You're my family now. They went to see Lindsay, who was awake and hooked up to various monitors. When she saw them, she tried to smile, but Marcus could see the fear in her blue eyes. Hey, Mr. Marcus, she said weakly. Guess I gave everyone a scare, huh? Marcus sat on the edge of her bed and took her small hand. You did. But we're going to fix this, okay? You're going to have surgery and then you're going to be all better. Better than before. You'll be able to run and play and do anything you want. Will it hurt? A little, he said honestly. But only for a while. And I'll be here when you wake up, I promise. Your mom and I, we're not going anywhere. Lindsay looked at her mother, then back at Marcus. Mr. Marcus? Can I tell you a secret? Of course, sweetheart. She gestured for him to lean closer, then whispered in his ear. I wish you were my real dad. Would that be okay? Would your son in heaven be mad? Marcus felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered back. He wouldn't be mad, Lindsay. I think he'd be happy that I found someone special to take care of. And I wish you were my real daughter. You're in my heart, just like Alex is. Both of you, together. Lindsay smiled, a real smile, and closed her eyes, exhausted. Good. Love you almost, Dad. I love you too, baby girl. The week leading up to the surgery was the longest of Marcus's life. He took time off work, something he'd never done, to be at the hospital with Catherine and Lindsay. He held Lindsay's hand through tests and consultations. He comforted Catherine when she broke down in the hallway. He lay awake at night, bargaining with God, with the universe, with fate itself. The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Marcus and Catherine arrived at the hospital at 5 a.m., finding Lindsay already prepped and surprisingly calm. "I'm going to be brave," she told them, "like a superhero. Like you always tell me, Mr. Marcus. Falcones are brave." It was the first time she'd used his last name, and Marcus realized she was already thinking of herself as one of them. The thought gave him strength even as fear threatened to overwhelm him. They wheeled Lindsay into surgery at 7 a.m. The last thing she said was, "See you soon, Mom. See you soon, almost, Dad." Then she was gone, disappearing through doors Marcus and Catherine couldn't follow through. They were led to a private waiting room that Marcus had arranged. Comfortable, quiet, with coffee and food they couldn't possibly eat. The surgery was supposed to take 4 to 6 hours. Marcus and Catherine sat together, sometimes talking, sometimes in silence, always touching, hands clasped, arms around each other, drawing strength from physical connection. At hour 3, Marcus said, "If she pulls through this, I want us to be a real family." Catherine looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean I want to marry you. Adopt Lindsay legally. Make this official. Not because of the medical crisis, but because I love you both. Because you've given me a reason to live again. Because I want to wake up every morning knowing you're both mine and I'm yours." "Marcus, I know it's fast. I know some people will say it's too soon after Joanne. But Catherine, life is short. I learned that the hardest way possible. When you find something real, you hold on to it. You don't wait. You don't waste time. Say yes. Please say yes." "Yes," Catherine whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you. But Marcus, she has to make it through this first. She has to." Her voice broke. At hour 6, Dr. Patterson finally emerged, still in surgical scrubs, looking exhausted but smiling. "The surgery was successful," he said, and Catherine collapsed against Marcus with a sob of relief. "Lindsay is a fighter. The procedure went as well as we could have hoped. She's in recovery now. She's going to be okay." Marcus felt his knees go weak. She's going to be okay. Lindsay was going to live, was going to laugh, was going to grow up. The relief was so intense it was almost painful. "When can we see her?" Catherine asked. "Soon. She's still unconscious, but you can sit with her in recovery." They followed Dr. Patterson to a recovery room where Lindsay lay, looking impossibly small and fragile, with tubes and wires connecting her to various machines. But her chest was rising and falling steadily, and her face was peaceful. Marcus and Catherine sat on either side of the bed, each holding one of Lindsay's hands. Hours passed. Visitors came and went, nurses checking vitals, doctors reviewing charts. And finally, as afternoon light streamed through the window, Lindsay's eyes fluttered open. "Mom?" she whispered. "Mr. Marcus?" "We're here, baby," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. "We're right here." Lindsay smiled weakly. "Did I do good? Was I brave?" "You were the bravest," Marcus said, kissing her forehead. "The absolute bravest. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." "Good." Lindsay's eyes drifted closed again. "'Cause Falcones are brave, right?" "Right," Marcus agreed, his voice breaking. "Falcones are brave, and you're a Falcone, baby girl, in every way that matters." The recovery period was long but steady. Lindsay spent 2 weeks in the hospital, with Marcus and Catherine taking turns staying overnight. Marcus moved them both into his mansion as soon as Lindsay was released, refusing to hear any arguments about it. "You'll recover better here," he insisted. "There's space, there's comfort, and I'm not having my girls recovering in that tiny apartment." His girls. The phrase came so naturally now. Lindsay's bedroom in the mansion was next to what had been Alex's room. Marcus finally opened that door, finally went through his son's things. With Catherine's help, he created a memorial, a beautiful display of Alex's favorite things, his photos, his toys. Not a shrine to grief, but a celebration of a life that had been too short, but had been filled with love. One evening, Lindsay asked to see Alex's room. Marcus hesitated, but Catherine nodded encouragingly, so he took her small hand and walked her through. Lindsay looked at everything with wide eyes. The toy airplanes hanging from the ceiling, the photos of a little boy with blue eyes like hers, the books and the clothes and the evidence of a child deeply loved. "He was beautiful," Lindsay said finally. "Your son, he had my eyes." "He did," Marcus agreed. "You would have liked each other." "I think I do like him," Lindsay said simply, "even though I never met him." "Is that weird?" "Not weird at all." Lindsay thought for a moment, then said, "Can I talk to him sometimes? Tell him about my day and stuff? I talk to Grandma in heaven. I could talk to Alex too. Keep him company." Marcus had to turn away to hide his tears. "I think he'd like that very much." Over the next months, as Lindsay fully recovered and grew stronger than she'd ever been, Marcus and Catherine planned a future. But Marcus had one more surprise planned, something that would honor all of them. 4 months after Lindsay's surgery, Marcus called Catherine into his home office. "I want to show you something," he said, pulling up architectural plans on his computer. "What is this?" Catherine asked, studying the blueprints. "It's a community center in the Pearl District. It's going to be called the Alex and Joanne Falcone Foundation in partnership with the Lindsay Reynolds Hope Initiative." Catherine's hands flew to her mouth. "Marcus, it's going to help families like yours," he explained, his voice thick with emotion. "Single parents, families facing medical crises, people who just need a hand up. We'll offer subsidized housing, medical expense assistance, job training, childcare support, educational programs, everything you and Lindsay needed and more." "Why are you naming part of it after Lindsay?" "Because she's the one who saved me," Marcus said simply. "Without her, I'd still be that cold, dead inside man who cared about nothing but money. She showed me how to live again. She deserves to be remembered for that." Catherine was crying, but she was also smiling. "What do you need from me?" "I want you to run it, as executive director." "Marcus, I don't have the qualifications, so we'll get you qualified. I've already enrolled you at Portland State University, full scholarship, in their nonprofit management program. You'll learn while you work, build the foundation from the ground up. Catherine, you understand what these families need better than anyone because you lived it. Your empathy, your resilience, your heart, that's what this foundation needs, not some MBA who's never struggled." Catherine was speechless, overwhelmed. Finally, she managed, "When do I start?" "As soon as you're ready. We'll work on this together." The foundation's grand opening was scheduled for a sunny day in June. The event was massive. Politicians, business leaders, community activists, media from across the state. The converted warehouse in the Pearl District had been transformed into a beautiful space with offices, resource rooms, a children's play area, and a memorial wall honoring Alex and Joanne. Catherine, looking stunning in a blue dress Marcus had bought her, gave a speech about resilience and hope that left few dry eyes in the audience. Marcus spoke about loss and redemption, about how one little girl had reminded him that life was worth living. As the formal program concluded and people began mingling, Marcus caught Catherine's eye and gestured for her to return to the stage. She looked confused but complied. "There's one more announcement," Marcus said into the microphone, his heart pounding. This was it. The moment that would change everything, make everything official, make them a real family. The crowd quieted, curious. Marcus turned to face Catherine and slowly, deliberately, he got down on one knee. The crowd gasped. Catherine's hands flew to her face, tears already streaming. "Catherine Reynolds," Marcus began, his voice shaking but strong. "You walked into my life when I was at my lowest. You and your extraordinary daughter showed me that it was possible to love after loss, to hope after despair, to live after merely existing. You taught me that second chances are real, that family is more than blood, that the heart can break and heal and break and heal, and still have room for more love. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it, revealing a diamond ring that caught the light and threw rainbows across the stage. You've made me want to be a better man. You've given me a reason to use my wealth for good, to think beyond profits and losses, to see people instead of assets. I love you, Catherine. I love your strength and your kindness and your refusal to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. And I love Lindsay like she's my own daughter. In my heart, she already is. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Lindsay, standing in the front row, was bouncing on her toes with excitement. Will you marry me? Marcus asked. Will you let me be your husband and Lindsay's father? Will you make me the luckiest man alive by saying yes? Catherine was crying too hard to speak at first. Finally, she managed, yes. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Marcus stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her as the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Lindsay ran onto the stage and threw herself into their arms, creating a three-way hug that photographers captured from every angle. Does this mean Mr. Marcus is really my dad now? Lindsay asked loudly enough for the microphone to catch. If that's okay with you, Marcus said, looking down at her with all the love in his heart showing on his face. It's the best, Lindsay declared. I always wanted a dad and I got the best one ever. The crowd laughed and cried, and in that moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Complete. Not healed. He'd never fully heal from losing Alex and Joanne, but whole enough to embrace this new chapter, this new family, this new life. The wedding took place 3 months later on Cannon Beach with the ocean as their witness, and the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was a small ceremony, just their closest friends and the people who mattered most. Lindsay was the flower girl, wearing a white dress and a crown of flowers, and she took her role very seriously, making sure every petal was placed just right, as Marcus and Catherine exchanged vows, as he promised to love her in sickness and in health, in wealth and in poverty, for better or worse. He felt Joanne and Alex's presence, not as ghosts haunting him, but as blessings, as permissions, as love that transcended death. He imagined Joanne smiling, saying, "Finally, Marcus, finally you're living again." He imagined Alex happy that his dad had found Lindsay, that even though Alex couldn't be here, there was another child receiving the love Marcus had to give. I love you, he told Catherine as they kissed, making it official. I love you so much. I love you too, she whispered back. Thank you for saving us. You saved me first, he replied. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the living room of their home. No longer his mansion, but their home, filled with Lindsay's artwork and Catherine's books and the sound of laughter and life. It was late on a Friday evening. Lindsay was asleep upstairs in her room, next to Alex's memorial room that she visited often to tell her brother about her day. The adoption had been finalized 3 months earlier. Lindsay was now legally Lindsay Falcone, and she'd been unbearably proud of her new last name, introducing herself to everyone as Lindsay Falcone, and I have the best dad ever. The foundation was thriving, having already helped over 500 families in the Portland area. Catherine had taken to her role like she was born for it, bringing compassion and practical wisdom to every decision. She was finishing her degree with honors and had been featured in Portland Monthly as one of the city's rising nonprofit leaders. Marcus had transformed his business practices too. Every Falcone property now had affordable housing units. There were scholarship programs for tenants' children, an emergency assistance fund for families facing crises. He'd learned that wealth meant nothing if it wasn't used to make the world better. What are you thinking about? Catherine asked, coming up behind him and wrapping her arms around his waist. About how I almost threw you out, Marcus said. About how different my life would be if I'd just been the cold businessman that day, if I'd stuck to the eviction plan. I would have lost everything. You, Lindsay, this happiness, this purpose. One decision, one little girl offering me a Barbie. That's all it took to change everything. She still has that Barbie, you know, Catherine said. In a display case in her room, she says it's magic. Maybe it is, Marcus said, turning to hold his wife. Maybe it really is. From upstairs, they heard Lindsay's voice calling out, "Dad, can you come tuck me in again? I had a bad dream." Dad. The word still made Marcus's heart clench with joy and sorrow combined. Joy for Lindsay, sorrow for Alex. But mostly joy. He'd learned he could hold both, could honor his past while embracing his present. "I'll be right there, sweetheart," he called back. He kissed Catherine once more, then headed upstairs to comfort his daughter. As he sat on Lindsay's bed, stroking her hair until she fell back asleep, he thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the depths of grief to this moment of peace, from wanting to die to having so many reasons to live, from being broken to being whole again, even if the cracks still showed. On Lindsay's nightstand, the mermaid Barbie sat in its glass case, a reminder of the day a 6-year-old girl had offered everything she had to save her mother, and in doing so, had saved a broken man too. Marcus kissed Lindsay's forehead and whispered, "Thank you, baby girl. Thank you for not giving up on the man at the door. Thank you for seeing the good in me when I couldn't see it in myself." Lindsay smiled in her sleep, and somewhere, Marcus felt certain, Alex and Joanne were smiling too. Not because they'd been replaced, love doesn't work that way, but because the man they'd loved had finally found his way back from darkness into light. He stood, turned off the lamp, and left the door cracked open the way Lindsay liked it. Walking back downstairs to his wife, to his life, to his second chance at happiness, Marcus Falcone finally understood what Catherine had tried to tell him that day in the break room. Dead things don't feel pain. He felt pain sometimes, grief for what he'd lost, but he also felt joy and love and hope, and that meant he was alive, really, truly alive. And that, he thought as he took Catherine's hand and led her to the couch where they'd watch the city lights together, was the greatest gift a little girl with a Barbie could have given him. Not just the chance to help them, but the chance to save himself. The end of one story, the beginning of another. And the proof that sometimes, in our darkest moments, salvation comes in the form of a child's desperate offer and a parent's quiet strength. Sometimes when we think we're saving others, we're actually the ones being saved. And sometimes love really does get a second chance, if we're brave enough to accept it. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this tale full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. And if you enjoyed the plot, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.